Hey, hello all. Welcome back to Career with Vasanth YouTube channel. And some of you know, I'm starting a cohort, and today was the day one of my cohort. Followed by my video, you're going to see the complete cohort recording. So I thought of making the first one video public so that you know how the cohort works, how the people are interacting, how we are building the things together, how it is helping their interview process. As at the session one, there is one chance. If you still want to be part of the cohort, we have like around 5 slots left. And you could message us on the number shown on the screen, also in the description section on the WhatsApp. If you're still interested, you can be part of the cohort. Otherwise, still you can watch the first content for free. Thank you so much. Watch the rest of the content. So this how let me first talk about how this session is going to be. As you all know, roughly the session duration is for around 2 hours. So to begin with, what we're going to do is we'll spend around 15-20 minutes about introduction of the cohort and about the introduction of all the participants here. Followed by basically we will be getting started, and there's a concept for the today will be like JavaScript execution context and the runtime environment. We'll be covering that. In middle of the session, there's going to be one quiz, and after the session, you will be shared with a few questions as well for the preparation. Okay, so without wasting further time, let's get started. If there is any problem of video, audio in middle, you're free to unmute yourself and you can help me. Okay, let me share my screen. So let's start by my introduction, and then followed by we have cohort introduction, few call outs and everything. So a large degree of me I have already introduced because everybody in this cohort, whoever are there in the call right now, so all of them I have personally interviewed and I've spoken to them and I've given a detailed introduction of myself. Again, I will not quick. I just take 1 or 2 minutes just to recap and to proceed further. And so overall, I have close to 10 years of IT industry experience. My core skills are front-end development. I build a mobile and web application, React Native, React JS, native Android, native iOS, Angular, Ionic. These have been my core skills. And last 4.5 years, I'm part of Walmart Global Tech. I serve as a staff software engineer here. I joined Walmart in 2021. When I joined, I was a level 3 or software engineer 3. Then I got 2 promotions to become senior and finally to staff software engineer. Recently, I became a staff software engineer here. And here also I build both mobile as well as web application. My day-to-day activity would involve mentoring juniors, and a lot of my time spent I spend in building systems end to end. I interact with principal architects, distinguished engineers, directors. So we're not necessarily a front end or a back end problem. Given a problem, how do we solve it the best way so that our end users are basically being happy? That's what I spend most of my time in my office. And as I've already told, I mentor, I create content on LinkedIn and YouTube, and I'm running the cohort now. So close to 60,000 followers I have on LinkedIn, and YouTube I have close to 21,000 subscribers. Both the places I create content about interview and the general front end preparation. Okay, that's high level introduction of me. Now let's start with the cohort introduction, how the each session is going to be. As I've already mentioned in our calls, so the each session duration is roughly around 2 hours. Sometimes it might slightly extend 2 hours, sometimes it might be like lesser than 2 hours, like 1.5 hour, depending on the topic that we are picking on that day. So there's no hard constraint on the session duration. All I request is like you keep half an hour buffer. Let's say 2 hour is a session. You keep like 2.5 hours in case if it goes here and there, so that like we can best utilize our overall best utilize the discussion that happened in the session. Okay. So whatever the topics covered, JavaScript, React JS, machine coding, system design, and DSA. So these are the 5 verticals that I consider as the 5 pillars of the front-end interview preparation. All these 5 verticals will be taught in depth in the session. Only I think the DSA part I'm going to explain how we are picking. The rest will be explained in depth. So overall participation counts for the cohort is 18. So we planned 25. I interviewed around 38 people for this. I mean, close to 70 people registered for the first round. Then some took that assignment, and then finally 38 people were shortlisted. In that, finally we are at 18. Couple of them we selected, but they could not join for whatever reason. Still, I kept that tilt because 1 or 2 still wants to join, and they're at the last leg of payment and other things. So it might become 20 and not beyond 20 as per I know. Okay. Session format, as I already told, live session, something like this. There's going to be quizzes. Like one is I've already kept open, which I'll be sharing in the middle of the session. And there'll be live assignments. Live assignments means we'll be picking some question and we as a team will try to solve, and we'll have a lot of discussions. Like there'll be meaningful pauses that I'll be giving in middle of the session so that we could connect and discuss as well. Okay. And let's go through a few of the call outs that I wanted to make so that like everybody in the cohort are aware of this. See, complete participation group is like close to 2 years and above. I think one participant is of 1.5 year, but on an average, like everybody here are 2 year and above. we have like more than like 4 or 5 participants who are like 10 plus years of experience. So extreme basics of web is not taught as a part of the cohort. Like I wouldn't be teaching how do you do the console.log in the cohort. Okay. And it's not a DSA heavy cohort. For many in the my one-on-ones also, screening call have informed that. So you will not be able to clear Google level of DSA problem by end of the cohort. They'll definitely will be solving DSA, but it's not like a DSA heavy sort of a cohort. Again, there's not a UI design heavy program as well. Like I'm like will not be building so much of animation, drag and drops and things like that. It'll be primarily a functionality heavy, which is definitely asked in a similar way in the interview as well. Okay. Still in the screening call as well, it's a placement assisted program, not guaranteed. And I'll be going to all the concepts in depth as much as it is relevant. I mean, don't consider like I'm going to explain it at a very shallow level, not like that. But many a times candidates also don't understand like what level of depth to go in a particular concept. So what I'm going to ensure is whatever with my years of experience of giving interview, taking interviews and talking to so many people, how much is exactly relevant, that level of depth I'll go. But if you're interested in knowing any further, you can always message me and I'll be happy to explain you the concepts in depth. That is the thing. And we will start the session like maximum wait time for to begin a session is only 2 minutes. So I would suggest you plan your timings accordingly. Unless there is some internet issues or personal emergency for me, I wouldn't be late to the session. Like max 2 minutes will wait. So all of you guys are request to join the session on time or within 2 minutes. And tools we are using for the overall cohort, a lot of cohort management software that I explored, like Kajabi, LearnList, and many other circle. But I feel like everybody were offering one and not offering another, and they were not good at everything that they were offering. So I decided to go with the Google Suite. So this is the like Google subscription we have. So we'll be connecting over Gmeet, where like the one we connected for all our day-to-day connections of meetings. Google Sheets will be used for all the assignment sharing purposes. Google Forms is used for a live quiz and even the take-home quizzes as well. I'm going to create a Discord channel today, and in fact, channel is created, but I haven't invited anyone. So today I'll be creating. So the Discord will use for all our group announcements and group discussion and everything. Notion for our session content, the one you are seeing just now, right? Like the Notion. So this will be used for our session content. These are the tools that we'll be using. So you'll be invited to one after another, depending on like the whatever is required. And in the middle of the session also, let's say you while I'm explaining something you have a doubt, I would request you basically to raise your hand, and I give a meaningful pauses in middle of the session so that I can ask you to, I can give a chance to you to ask your question, and I'll try to answer that. Okay. The reason being, like, if you ask a doubt as soon as you get, sometimes it will like affect the class, like people will be in a momentum to listen, and I make sure like I give a pause at every periodic interval so that like there's enough time and enough time given to everyone to discuss whatever the doubts that they have. Okay. And even when I ask some question also, if you want to answer, you can again raise your hand. I'll ask randomly, like let's say I ask a person A first time, then I would be asking person B the next time, so you all can involve and basically discuss. Okay. And what we are not, see, I never believed in making a group activity for an experienced engineer. So there is no group activity. I'll not be grouping like two to three of you and ask you to build some project. I will not do that. Okay. And we will not be making any big clones as a part of this cloud, like Swiggy clone, YouTube clone. I never believed in also making a bigger clone, because the product that has built over a decade, if you try to clone them, you will only clone some screens, but not the product. So we'll be picking some interesting stuff from these bigger systems and we'll be certainly solving them, but not like we'll be building a big project. It will take like weeks time and not much beneficial for the interview point of view. Okay. And from the day of that we are starting code, which is Jan 10th, and the potential end date is March 10th. Only I have one planned holiday, that is February 15th, Shivratri, which is on Sunday. So I just wanted to call it out. So if anybody want to take, you also want to take a holiday, that is the day. Definitely there's not going to be session unless there is any medical emergency or personal emergency. All the weekends I'm available. I've kept myself available throughout. Okay. Before I go to the next section, which is I want you guys to introduce yourself. Are there any questions regarding the way cohort is conducted and how we are going to handle the session? You don't have to raise your hand now. You can unmute yourself and you can say if there are any doubts or anything that you wanted to ask me. Perfect. I suppose then there is no doubts. Let me stop sharing. Something that like over a period of studying the thing forever, right? Then I started how to studying the studying.
Okay. And as a part of this, this is something that's a rule that has come out, and this is something that helped me a lot and helped my lot of my mentees who while they were preparing for their interview. Okay. So I call it like three-part rule. So which I call like a definition, bookish example, and a practical example. So depending on your experience, some of these things become must, some of these things are like okay. Like for example, if you're just like 1 or 2 years of experience, then practical example many times is not very important. But if you are somebody who is at a 5+ years of experience, then this three-part rule is very, very essential for you to study. So if you look at any topic while you're studying, you can fit this three-part rule. One is a definition. Like I've given example, right? Hoisting. Hoisting is a JavaScript behavior where the declaration of a variable, function, and classes appears to move to the top of the block, top of their enclosing scope during the compilation phase. Before the code is executed. So this is an exact definition or almost the definition that I've taken from the official documentation. I my expectation is you need not to know word by word the same way because it's not an exam, but your definition should sound very similar to what is the official definition. If you see like if you do not say like appears to move to the top of the block, and you say moves to the top of the block in case of hosting, right? Then you the whole essence of the topic is gone, and many interviewers now are becoming fundamentally especially like they expect you to fundamentally very strong because of the Gen and other things. Coding has become quite easy. So for you to be fundamentally very strong, you should have a good understanding of this definition. Okay. So many people think, no, it is not an exam, not required. But if you could really articulate a good definition, the respect for you in the interview would go. Second step is like bookish example. So bookish example means something that you can prove by writing it. Like in this hosting, console.log of host variable output is undefined. Very common example. I think most of you know, I don't want to explain it. I've created a variable called hosted variable in line number 2. In line number 1, I tried outputting it. So which has come to undefined. And whenever I output it in line number 3, I'm getting this is hosted. So this is a bookish example. So this bookish example I'm calling is practically no developer would code like this, right? Like most of us, we wouldn't create a variable in line number 2 and use it in line number 1. No sane programmer will do that. So it's a bookish example to prove a concept, but this at least you should know. Because they ask like, can you give an example of hosting? This is something that you can give. Third is a practical example. So they would ask like there are concepts, but no concept is actually created for interview, right? They're actually created for some real purpose. So because of that, you should know when to practically use a concept. Like for example, hosting. Hosting gives the ability for us to a facility for us to call a function from anywhere. Correct. Because there are like variable created with var keyword getting hosted, and that particular variable is becoming undefined, is of no use to all of us. Like nobody would do that, right? Like you would create a variable and it becoming undefined is of no use to us. Correct. So, but where the hosting practically is useful for us, we are able to call a function from anywhere. Even if you take the old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript driven websites, where you used to have one index.html file, and there used to be like a lot of JavaScript files like 1.js, 2.js, all of these JS. And from 1.js, you used to call a method declared in 3.js. That was working only because of hosting. And if you can really give an example like in the interview, again, the respect towards you would grow and the trust for you would increase. Consider interview as a game of building a trust. The how quickly you build that better it is. Like first 20 minutes of the interview, you say absolutely right answers for all the questions that interviewer asks. Then one question you give a wrong answer also. Many times interviewer thinks what you're saying is only correct. If it is slightly complicated thing, right? With where interviewer themselves are not fully clear. So it's all about building trust and following this three-part rule, you can build a lot of trust. And secondly, every time when you read a topic, right, you wouldn't know like what depth to study. This is a problem that many face because they start studying the event loop and then they get into hosting, then they get into closure. They keep navigating from one to another. They're not sure how much depth to go. If you could really make these three things like in your mind, you know, an definition, example, and a practical example, consider that as a great level of concept, you know, and then you can slowly start moving to the another topic. Okay. Anybody has any doubts on this three parts rule of studying? Perfect. Now next, making a notes. See, throughout the session, everything that I teach will be already part of this notion. So you don't have to note down almost anything. Zero, I would say. But if at all there is something very interesting that you want to note down for personal use, you would do. Because me as an individual, I never liked taking notes while somebody is teaching. In my college days also, my engineering, my 11th and 12th, I never liked that. Because somebody is talking very interestingly, I should listen to that, not busy in taking a note. I strongly believe mind cannot do two things at once. One thing focused is what I believe. So you don't have to take a note of anything in the session. All things that I would teach will be part of the notion, which will be shared with you later, or anything that is, assignments, everything, even the session recording will be shared with you. There is a Gemini agent that is running and taking a note of the session as well. Even summary will be shared with you. So you don't have to take a note anything in the session. Just listen to me. Whatever I ask, please do that. That's all. So this note is not for in the session. This is after the session. So then let's say you go to a concept like hoisting and you study something. I would want you to create a document, preferably a cloud document like Google Docs or anything like that, which can be shareable, which is accessible on mobile, desktop, web, everywhere. And that document becomes a living document for your interview preparation. So you can fit into these three particular rule of any topic that you would study and document that on the Google Docs. Why I'm saying that is like during the time of an interview, you cannot go through all the documentation that is available, like even my Notion or some YouTube videos, ChatGPT. You cannot go through everything at that point in time. In a 1 hour, if you have to revise, your notes will be very beneficial for you. And in a living document, let's say you study a new topic and there's a takeaway, go and document it. Or you go to an interview and there's a new takeaway, come back and document that. So basically, the document is a living document, will be constantly updated. Okay. And like people will have a lot of preferences in while coding. Like for example, I don't prefer using for in, for off, reduce, for each, map, and everything. In interview coding, I prefer using just the for basic for loop for I that I is equal to 0. That's my preference, and I'm very comfortable doing that. And I also don't like using call, apply, bind in interviews. Like I don't like calling a function using this dot call and all. I don't like it. So if you have any preference or so like that, right? So you can write an example that works well for you. Not necessarily your document I will not be reviewing or nobody will be reviewing. It's only for you. Also, I will not be validating whether your document is correct or wrong. It is just for your purpose, which is a living document that helps you to basically keep it evolving. And every time when you have to interview, only you have to go through that document and mostly you're done. Okay. Last thing, and only after this, immediately we'll get started with the content of the day. So the temperament of why. Okay. What do I mean by this is when I started creating content in 2021, one of the main reason I started creating content was there was many whys in my mind. And I used to take a lot of time to figure that out. I'll give you an example of again hosting. So if JavaScript supports hosting, then is it an interpreted language or a compiled language? I suppose most here know the difference between interpreted and compiled. Interpreted languages are where the line by line execution happens. Compiled language is where entire source code is set to a compiler and it is converted into a machine understandable code and finally executed. So if hosting executes, that means a two-part execution, right? So if two-part execution happening, then probably the code is not being interpreted. It is maybe compiled, correct? So there were many whys in my mind, and I started searching answers for that. And that's the reason I started creating content, because I thought like many has this why in their mind and they never got the answer. But now, luckily, we all know if all we have to know now is just asking the right question. Answers are readily available. Like you go and ask ChatGPT of any why, you will get. In fact, recently, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, we were seeing like Tailwind CSS laid off their 80% of their engineers, right? I know. I think some of you might have read that. And then funny point is like I read about it and I got to know there were only 3 developers there it seems. Out of them, 2 were laid off and they're saying 80% left, right? Now, if you have to rewrite the Tailwind CSS, probably in a matter of few days, we can rewrite the Tailwind CSS by ourselves with the help of Generator tool. So you don't have to get answers for everything, but you should know how to get the right questions. So for that, I want everyone to start asking why to yourself whenever you're reading something. Like for example, you have a parent-child relationship in React. How parent is able to pass certain props to the child, correct? Or you're using the Redux. How Redux works behind the scenes. There is only limited curiosity that I or anybody can build in you, but I want you to inculcate this temperament of why in yourself so that you become an extremely good developer without anyone's help. In today's session also, I'll try to give you a few examples so that you can learn it quite well and eventually like you can master this temperament of why by yourself. Okay. Now we'll get into the session's topic. Before that, are there any questions or thoughts? Okay, let's get started. So the first topic of the day is like JavaScript runtime. Okay, so JavaScript runtime is an environment in which JavaScript code runs. So this I've taken as the very first topic to be taught. The reason being like without this, like probably like there is nothing else. This is the extreme fundamentals of JavaScript. Okay, so please listen to this first topic very carefully and look at the depth that I would go here. Imagine like if you're picking any topic, this might act like a litmus test. Like this is a level of depth that you can also go. Okay. So now JavaScript runtime environment units JavaScript code runs. It has basically has primarily two parts. One is JavaScript engine, the part number one. Second one is the browser capabilities, where I'm clubbing all of these things in the browser capabilities. We have primarily have two parts, JavaScript engine and the browser capabilities. Browser capabilities involve browser web APIs, queues, and event loop. Okay. So JavaScript by itself is a single threaded synchronous by default. Very, very important. Some of you might know, but I really want you to like some of those who don't know, really want you to take this to your heart. JavaScript is not a asynchronous programming language. It is a single threaded synchronous by default. All the asynchronities that JavaScript has is provided by browser runtime, which is a combination of few things. Okay. Before I go to the further explanation of the JavaScript engine, are there any questions? Okay, you're free to unmute and ask if at all there are any. Okay. Next, I'll go to the JavaScript engine. So JavaScript engine is basically responsible for executing the JavaScript code. The very popular engine I think most of you would know is V8. It's a Chrome browser's engine. There's a JavaScript core, which is by Safari, and there is a engine called Chakra, which is a legacy browser which is used in Internet Explorer and all. Safari has, the Mozilla Firefox has its own version of its own engine. Every browser almost has its own engine, but according to me, the most popular engine on internet right now is V8. Even the browser that OpenAI built was built using the Chromium, which again runs on the V8. Okay, as again most of you would know, V8 is an engine that is written using the C++. Okay, if you look at it, like it is more like writing a compiler for executing a code. So JavaScript or the ECMAScript, right, they will propose some standards. Like whenever there is a variable created with var keyword, this is the way you need to treat it. Whenever there's a variable created with lat keyword, this is the way you need to treat it. Engines are nothing but compilers or a software that basically understand these nuances or how this code need to be executed, and they help you basically execute. So if you're really interested or if you have time, you can build your own engine. No, need not to be like should solve all the problems. You could take few basic examples like creating a function, creating a variable, and you can write your own engine where the code is fed to your engine, and you can parse and you can output the result. It's quite easy now if you are using any GenAI tool, right? And you want to build your own engine, not that complicated. But to build something of as capable as V8 is difficult because it's an industry grade. They might have built it over a period of a lot of the time. But to begin with, if you want to just play around and build your own engine, you can certainly do it. Okay. So engine also contains primarily two parts. One is a memory heap, another one is a call stack. Okay. Memory heap is basically, as the very word says, is primarily used to store the variables, like storing the variables, objects, functions. All of this basically happens in the memory heap. Okay. And next we have the call stack. I suppose most of us would also definitely know what is a call stack. So this is basically where the JavaScript code get executed. So as it's a stack, it's a last in first out. I'm putting, but like we are having a plate, one on top of another. Whatever is in the last that can be picked first, same way. Whatever is the last part of code that get executed first. Okay, only one piece of code get executed anytime in the call stack because it's a stack. You can pick only one plate on from the top. Correct. Same way the call stack also works. Okay, and I'll execute the call. I'll explain the call stack, and again I'll take a pause. You could ask me any question if they're in your mind. Okay. Next is the call stack execution. Correct. Suppose this also everybody would know. So now let's say this is a small block of code that I have written here. Function A, I'm calling the A. So A is getting called function A. Function A is calling function B. Function B has a log statement which is getting executed. Then if it is not returning anything, by default it will like return the void. And then we come to A. Again, it is not returning anything. By default, we will return the void. Then we would end the execution. Okay. If you look at the execution flow, A is pushed onto the stack. B is pushed onto the stack, console log executes, function completes, and finally popped out of the stack. If the call stack is blocked, no further JavaScript code can execute. This is very common sense. If stack is taking more time because let's say you have a for loop that is running, for example, 1 million times or 2 million times, and the stack is stuck, the call stack is blocked till the time and nothing executes. So main thread is busy. Correct? So if you look at this in overall structure, as I told, JavaScript engine has memory heap, call stack, garbage collector, event loop. Regarding these side things like web API, event loop, these I'm going to discuss in a while. Now we discuss this part. Okay, JavaScript engine has two parts: memory engine and call stack. These two things, I suppose you guys are clear.
So, Vasant here, So, in the V8 engine, so the compiler and interpreter are part of that engine, right?
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah. So everything, these two things are part of engine. See, one thing I want to make a differentiating thing, right? Engine and browser are different. I know you all of you know, but I'm just making it very explicit. Browser does so many things, and engine is a part of that also. It's not browser is not only responsible for running the JavaScript. Okay.
okay. So first, the all code in our function line by line got interpreted, right?
Yeah.
And then it got compiled, no?
That's a good question actually. So there are like two different ways to look at it. I did not get your name. I'm sorry. Who is asking now?
Abhijit, Abhijit.
Abhijit, yeah. So there are like quite a few different ways to look at it. As I told, JavaScript is not by default from the definition point of view, it is neither interpreted nor compiled. There used to be a definition which I saw on MDN very long back, which said it was interpreted. Now they don't officially say it is an interpreted sort of a language. So it all depends on how engine want to process the language. Like if you see like modern, whenever you're coding now VS Code or any other engines, right? If you try to create a variable and don't try to use it before that, we get warnings now. On that way, like now the engines or the whatever the IDs that are being, they are quite brilliant. So JavaScript right now depends on how engine is executing them. So it is very difficult to call an interpretation. The reason being, there is two phases of execution, as you all know. One is a memory allocation phase, another one is the actual execution. So if something that executed like this, then certainly it is not getting interpreted. But what I think, there could be certain engines where if they want to make a JavaScript as an interpreted language, it's possible to do that. Some languages cannot be interpreted at all. For example, languages like C or C++, those are always compiled languages. JavaScript, if engines want them to be interpreted, it can be interpreted. If engines want them to be compiled, they can be compiled. So these engines are written in the pursuit of the product. Like for example, if V8, which is a Chrome's engine, whatever is best required for them or however they want to use the language, that's the way they are executing it or using it.
So is it different in the different engines or the same structure or behavior they
Today,
have
yeah,
been?
all the
Uh,
modern engines that I gave above, like V8, Chakra, and other engines, they all actually compile your code. So because of which, if there are any issues or something, they'll be like able to detect earlier only. So there's no line by like execution happening here.
they directly compile the R code.
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
So now the temperament I was talking, right? Like the why temperament. At this point in time, is any question coming to your mind? Definitely, we'll discuss further about web APIs and other things. At this point in time, any why, like why we are doing something, any why come to your mind? Like you can be stupid here because it's a very small group of people, and nobody is here to judge anything because everybody is in pursuit of basically going to the next level. So if any why came to your mind, you're free to tell me. And I'll tell what whys came to my mind also at the end of that. Any why, like why they are doing like this, or any questions around that? Anybody has anything in their mind? You could unmute yourself and talk if there anything.
So, Vasanth, what is the advantage of either compiled or interpreted language? Like, is there any um, advantages?
Interpreter is fast. If you look, interpretation is always faster than the compilation because it's a line by line execution, right? If you open any old Python IDEs where you could just write a code, and whenever you write the next line, that execution will complete. So interpretation is faster. But the problem is on a production grade application, right? The interpretation is not easier because you have a lot of code block, right? And every time you will not be able to run line by line. Also, what if there is some issue in some part of the code, like syntactical issues or something like that? So compilation makes your overall code like much more safer for the production deployment. So if you ask my opinion, if I build an engine today for JavaScript, I will make it like compiled sort of a one, not the interpretation one.
Okay, got it.
Suitable interpretation suitable for smaller, like it's not like it is really unsuitable for bigger application, but with my view, interpretation is very ideal for smaller apps. Okay. Any questions on this? This question was also good. But anything that came to your mind? Why we are doing something here?
So Vasant, as we know that JavaScript is single-threaded and synchronous language, so why that is actually
Synchronous, single thread, yeah, single threaded is more like the design principle. There is no answer to that. That's a good question that came to your mind, and the answer that luckily I know the answer I could tell. So, making it JavaScript single threaded is basically the whoever invented it, right? I'm not getting the name. Whoever invented that is
Mhm.
basically learning from the different languages that they have. If you even if you go and talk to any of your Java developer or you by yourself know Java, multi-threading even today in Java is not that very friendly concept for themselves. And end of the day, if you see the processor, like whatever the processor is there, that is remain the same. How many other threads you create, right? So it is the inventors thought that having a single threaded and giving it an asynchrony by different ways will make the performance and other things faster. That's the thought process of making it a single threaded language. Or the synchronous language, again, I think most languages are synchronous by nature. If you whether you look at Java, C, C++, all the languages are synchronous by nature. JavaScript is also synchronous by nature, but as it is single-threaded, to give an asynchronity, they come up with quite a few other things like web APIs and browser capabilities and all of that. Okay.
okay? And that's observing that single thread, we need to verify the call stack only, right? Means
Yeah. So yeah,
uh,
that is maybe the next topic. So because there's a single threaded, it can execute only from one point, right? It will not be able to
mhm.
do multiple things at once. So everything in the call stack is only what get executed, Abhijit. Yeah.
Correct, correct.
Yes. Okay. In the interest of time, see, if I were to look at this, the call stack explanation, right? First question that I would ask may not be the day one of when I started learning JavaScript, but now with little bit of experience, if I look at it, the first question that I would ask is why the call stack is a stack. Okay? As you all know, stack is a data structure. I told it's an arrangement of things like a plate. It's a last in, first out. Why not some other data structure? Why not it's a linked list? Why not it's a tree? Correct? Why it is stack? I'll answer in a while. But when you look at it tomorrow, you should also like start getting things like this in your mind. So that's the reason I'm saying why we are using stack as a data structure basically for executing. Okay. And one of the common thing that I get also is, let's say there are two console.log statements. Okay, console.log hello one and hello two. I'll ask candidates like how actually this executed with the help of call stack. They would say like console.log one gets into call stack, then console.log two gets into call stack, and then the execution would happen. But if you observe it very keenly, I think some of you may not make the mistake, but I'm just giving a general example. So hello went into call stack, then hello 2 went into the call stack. Now hello 2 is on the top of the call stack, right? It's a stack. Like we are arranging plates one on top of another. So on that note, the first output will be hello 2, followed by hello. So which is not what ideally expected, right? It should be hello and hello 2. So the stack arrangement is certainly not helping in case of a linear execution. Correct? Keep thinking. Some of you might really know the answer, some of you may not. Maybe by whenever I explain the further things, I'm going to explain why. Okay. But this is the sort of temperament I wanted to set. I'll be giving you more examples like that so that your mind slowly start becoming like that. Next, we have the browser APIs. As I told, browser has many responsibilities to do. One is it also has the engine within itself. It also provides a lot of web APIs. Correct? So web APIs here involve set time or set interval, fetch, DOM events, geolocation, web storage. If you look at from other point of view, JavaScript by itself cannot get a location of the user. Browser can do that. The reason, browser has an interaction with the system hardware. System hardware has some sensors because of which it would get the geolocation or making some API calls, etc. So JavaScript relies on browser capabilities basically to get these things. Maybe things like set time or set interval. Consider like especially these things are capabilities that will make JavaScript to work in an asynchronous behavior when there's single threaded and there's only one call stack which will be executed. Okay. JavaScript delegates asynchronous work to these web APIs and continues its execution. So JavaScript do not wait for anything. And one more small call out here, if you see, right? If the execution flow, JavaScript registers the timer, browser web API handles the timer. JavaScript continues running without waiting. So if you see, many a time I ask in the concept of event loop, any will go to debug and go through each of the topics in depth. But many a times I ask like, now you have a set timeout and candidates will say set mode will go to the macro task queue and set mode get executed there. But thing is, if you look at very carefully, JavaScript is single threaded. There is only one thread which is doing some work, correct? So who is moving into the queue, or who is moving into the task queue or micro task queue or macro task queue, anything? It is actually JavaScript main thread only doing that. Putting other way, even if there is a timeout, it always enters the call stack first. And JavaScript engine or the main thread gets to know it cannot be executed in the call stack, and it will move that to the queue. Remember this point very carefully. Anything that get executed, even if it is not something that is not JavaScript engine's capability, still it is something that goes to call stack at once and comes out and gets into the other block. Okay, always remember that. And uh, I'll get into the queues now. But I think again, this queues concepts also most of us would know. Like there are quite a few names. I don't know like why there are so many different names for the queue. Like some call it micro task queue and macro task queue. But if you go and open the official definition of the MDN or the MDN document, there isn't a mentioning of this macro task and micro task queue. At least the last time I read. But maybe because of the behavior of it, there are two queues that everybody popularly call it. One is a micro task queue and another one is a macro task queue. And all the images that you see in this document, I've given a credit to wherever I've picked it from. Okay. So we have a macro task queue and micro task queue. All the things that are having the higher priority will get into the micro task queue. All the things that have a relatively lesser priority that go and sit in the macro task queue. Okay. Also, as I told, we have this web API section for providing us all the web related capabilities. Okay. So what goes into micro task queue? What goes into macro task queue? Okay, everybody would know that is promises are higher priority, so they get into the micro task queue, and uh, and async await again a higher priority, similar to promise as we all know. That also gets into the micro task queue, and queue micro task. Honestly, this is something that I was also not knowing for until like I started preparing for this and I read about it. Queue microtask is nothing but like schedules a specified function to be executed as a microtask. Let's say you have a block of code and you want that to be like quickly executed. So you can read more about it. You get a simple snippet similar to set time mode. The syntax is very similar to set time mode. So you can keep a block of code there. So instead of going into macro task queue, those code will get into the micro task queue. You manually prioritizing by using this queue micro task. Another one is a mutation observer, is a built-in JavaScript observer where what certain changes are happening. Again, you can get the lot of examples for mutation observer. So if any changes are happening and user is listening to such changes, so they all get into micro task queue. Maybe like network change on end of the page reached. All of these are listeners, so they all have a micro task. The reason being, as you can definitely guess. So whenever such change happens, JavaScript may want to do something very immediately. So because of that, they are part of the micro task queue. Macro task queue are set time or set interval and DOM events. Okay. Micro tasks are always executed before the macro task. So this is about the micro task queue and the macro task queue. We are going to discuss about the event loop. So far, we have finished the call stack, web API, micro task queue, and macro task queue. Okay. Are there any questions on the queue part?
So here I wasn't while explaining event loop in the interview actually. So do we need to obviously need to give example, or the interview give us the example, and we need to uh, draw something like this, or we just need to explain which one execute first, which one is in the
Correct.
queue,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So I think the most common example will be in the interview around the event loop. I suppose some of you might have been asked this in the interview. Is like line number one, console.log. Line number two is a set timeout. Line number three is a console.log. Correct? The
Uh-huh.
interviewer would ask how these three statements would execute. Like the console.log, where does it go? How does it execute? Then the second statement, which is a set timeout, where does it go? How does it execute? And the third statement, are you required to draw? No, nobody would ask you to draw. If you can explain the components, what are the important components and how they work, that's all they'll be looking for. But the more nuances you would add and try to explain it in depth, the more points that you would get. Like instead of you saying like it simply goes into call stack, micro tasking, macro task queue, if you can explain quite in depth, that's all the interviewer would look for. No need to draw.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions before we get into the event loop? Okay, thank you. Let me get into the next concept. Okay. Now this overall as an event loop, right? See, honestly, like most of you, when I started learning the JavaScript also, I had a notion this complete thing that is happening, the call stack, the micro task queue, macro task queue, web API, collectively this process of moving the things here and around is called event loop. That is also right in a way, but the event loop itself is also a concept, like whatever you see, right? Event loop itself, like what I want to say is, it's not like event loop, this entire process is called event loop. That is also to one degree fine, but there is an event loop in isolation also, it has an existence. I'll explain what is an event loop. Okay, so the event loop continuously checks the call stack and queues. I have written the execution order here, but if anybody wants to explain me like how exactly the event loop would work, what I mean is, so there are some tasks in stack, there are some tasks in the like micro task queue and some tasks in the macro task queue. So if you have to explain me the execution order, right, how it will execute, anybody wants to answer that? You would unmute you can unmute yourself and you can answer. Let's say as the same example I gave, right? Console.log set timeout and console.log, which goes where and how they get executed. Or you could also answer the way how the things in stack executed, how the things in queue, and how the loop would repeat. Anybody can unmute and answer.
So Vasanth,
Hey, Vasanth, can you repeat the question again?
Yes.
Yes.
So my question is, event loop as a concept, as you all know, there is certain things in stack, certain things in web API, certain things happen in micro task and macro task queue, right? There is sequence of tasks that are continuously executed. Like some are executed from stack, some will be picked from queue, micro task queue and macro task queue. My question is, what is the way how which event loop would work? Like which is executed first, which is executed next? How does the loop repeat? Anybody? That is my question.
yeah, Vasanth, like Srikhar here, I just want
Yeah,
to.
Shikhar, please go ahead.
Yeah, so from the JavaScript perspective, like all the synchronous operations in the call stack that are taking the highest priority and that are
Correct.
getting executed,
Okay.
and from the async operations, yes, and there's like the things from web APIs like set timeout and task, and we would be it would be checking for this promises and all the other like async operations. It would be like if it identifies it, it would be going to the microtask queue. So now the event loop would be checking for the call stack, or if all the synchronous operations are gets completed. Right now, it would be checking if the microtask queue is empty or not. So if at all there is anything pending in the microtask queue, now the event loop brings those particular things in an order to call stack. So once this microtask queue gets empty, now it would be checking the macrotask queue, and then it would be executing in an order-wise, like in a FIFO first in first out order-wise from the macrotask queue. It would be moving to call stack, and the things would be getting executed. So from the question like sample question, right? It would be get first executing the console log, and when it identifies that particular set timeout, it would be going to the particular macro task queue after the particular n seconds mentioned. So it would be staying in the web API section for the n seconds it would be mentioning. Then after that, it would be going to the macro task queue. And if in the meantime, if it recognize any other synchronous operation in the call stack, it would be executing. Once it is empty, then it would be moving that particular set timeout console log from the macro task queue to call stack queue, and it would be executing that. Vasanth.
That's correct, Shikhar. So there's a small change. I mean, again, you could answer and anybody else can also answer. See, as you told, everything in call stack is executed. Then there are certain things in micro task queue and macro task queue which needs to be executed. Both have something. What is the order in which they picked? Definitely, micro task has a priority and macro task has lesser priority. How these are picked? To getting. Mhm.
Sorry, I didn't get like how these are made in this
How
case.
these are picked, as in like stack is, once the stack is empty, till the stack is empty, we will not, like the event loop will not check for anything, correct? First the stack
Yes.
should become empty. Once after the stack is empty, so we go to the micro task queue. How we execute micro task queue? Will we execute all the things in micro task queue, or we execute only one and then go to call stack again? Then we go to the micro task queue. How it would work?
I guess it would be going one after one. I guess like putting all at once into call stack. That's what my assumption is, but I'm not aware of this particular thing as of till now. So what I'm assuming is like it would be taking all the dump at once to call stack, and it would be executing like, and then it would be going back to macro task queue, something like that.
Sure. Anybody else wants to answer this? I think my question is clear. Somebody, Harshita, what do you want to answer? Yeah.
So event loop basically checks first the microtask queue. Okay, that too, the stack wise. First in the priority one will event loop check that and put it into the call stack. First one, the priority one. and in the stack order.
If I understood Harshita your answer correctly, first it'll execute everything in the call stack. Then it look at a microtask queue, picks one and goes into the call stack. Correct?
Yes.
And then after that,
It executes that, and then again event loop check for if there is something more. It will put it. If there is something in the microtask, it will take it from the microtask. Else it will take from the macro.
okay, got it. I get what I'll repeat. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So everything in the call stack executed first. Once the call stack is empty, the loop will look if there is anything in the microtask queue. It will pick from there. Like it will pick first one and it will go to call stack and executes, and it will continuously keep on doing that until there is microtask queue is empty. Am I right, Harshita?
Yes, correct.
And then after that, what about the macro task queue? How does that work?
Again, microtask queue, there would be like in the stack order, it would be, and the first it will put it in this stack same way.
Okay. You say basically both are executed in the same way, but first priority is given to micro task queue followed by macro task queue, Harshita. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. It is slightly different. Anybody else wants to answer? Maybe Sonu raised his hand. Sonu, you want to answer? Or your answer was same?
Yeah, I mean, I guess JavaScript engine maintains the order of the execution. In JavaScript, the order matters. So even if it's microtask and macrotask, so as I said, event loop will observe, the call stack first when it's empty. The first priority will be microtask, and the second priority will be macrotask. And in the microtask, we will have the tasks by order, and it will push each other, and same to macro task as well. So from some way they maintain the order. I mean, I don't know what exact way
Sure.
they maintain the order. Yeah.
Sure. I'll take answer from one last person, then I then explain by myself. If anybody else wants to answer, the answer so far so told is not fully correct. The pieces of it are correct. Anybody wants to answer? You could raise your hand. Okay, sure. See, you could consider like this is an example of the depth that you need to go through, and probably not beyond this. So in system design, there is a concept. You design a system as simpler as required and not simpler than that. You don't want to oversimplify this, or you want to like overcomplicate it. Try to keep it as simple as required. Same way. So everything in the call stack is executed first, like as Harshita, Sonu, and others also explained, Shrikar explained. So that is the first priority. And after that, we pick task from micro task queue, and every task is from here, will move here one after the other until the micro task queue is empty. Okay, and get executed. And then in macro task queue, we don't repeat it. Macro task queue, we only pick the top one and we move here and we repeat the loop. So macro task queue is not emptied at once. So if you look at the order, call stack must be empty, executes all micro tasks, executes one macro task and repeat the cycle. Remember this very, very carefully. If you can really say this in interview, when interviewer asks you about the event loop, consider like probably you have attracted that interviewer very much. So next question that she would ask, like you are already in the good books of them. Okay. So call stack must be empty, executes all micro task, executes one macro task, repeat the cycle. Okay. Before I go to the next topic, if there are any question on this way of execution, please ask me.
Vasanth,
Yes, Vasanth, like why that's one micro task at a time? Like, why not just execute all of the macro task queue?
Yeah. Any question similar to that, I could collectively take the end answer. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, same question.
Got it. So, to be very honest, there is no, straight away answer to why for this. Why it only picks one from here and not all from here at once. But I'll tell you from the implementation details point of view. So as I already mentioned, everything that could be executed synchronously is already part of call stack. Point number one, anything that need to be executed synchronously already executed. Now, anything of higher priority after that is kept in micro task queue, and least priority things are kept in macro task queue. As you all know, call stack is like while it executing the micro task queue, which is according to the priority, the next priority after the call stack. If it start executing everything from the macro task queue, which is of least priority, There could be some other synchronous task. By then they've come and sit in the call stack. Correct. So if it wants to execute this, then the particular order of those synchronous tasks might get affected. So because those were the things that were supposed to be executed on priority, but instead we are picking something which was not so priority. Okay, so that's the reason this is the priority one, this is the priority two, priority three. After priority one, we are giving priority two the highest, and we are executing all of that. And priority three, we are not giving like all the things. We are only picking one and executing. One line answer, why? Because call stack is meant for executing things synchronously very quickly. The statement that need to be executed synchronously need to be executed first, not the one in the macro task queue. So to give a more priority, JavaScript engine execute it this way, or the event loop concept works this way. Any follow-up questions? Okay, even later also you get, you can ask me. Okay, so now one simple example, very simple example, the one I already gave, right? That example only I've written here. Very popularly asked in, used to be asked in interview. Now this has become so common now, people have like stopped asking. But if you see, there is one console.log statement, and then there is one set timeout with a duration of 0. And there is a promise.resolve with console.log as we are printing something console.log. Then we have console.log d. Okay. So if you closely look at it, we have one console.log and set timeout, which is actually of time 0. Okay. And then we have promise.resolve.then. If you look at this, even this promise is also like not being delayed. It is expected to execute immediately. Like there is no set timeout inside, or we are not making API call. This also wants to, ideally should be executed immediately. And then you have the console.log. Okay. I know some of you might know the answer, but in the interest of everyone, I'm explaining it in detail. Okay. So now set timeout with there is having a 0 and promise of having no nothing inside the promise that will delay the execution. Then you have console.log. But as per our call stack approach, what would happen is first console.log A goes into the stack and get executed. And then we have set timeout. So again, go to call stack and JavaScript decides something that I'm going to do that will be moved into the web API section. And then we have, then we have the promise. Again, it would know something that I cannot execute. That will move it to again, the web APIs. And then we have console.log d, which will be executed. So output will be A and D. Promise after it is resolved, it will come back and sit in the micro task queue. Set timeout, once it is resolved, it comes and sits in the macro task queue. So the priority of execution is like that. As you all know, one of the very common example, if at all the main thread is busy executing a big for loop, then things in micro task queue, macro task queue, so both may not be executed. So always remember the delay that you pass for the set timeout is not the delay. It is the minimum delay that you are passing. Okay, let's say I pass 1 second here. Within 1 second, set timeout will not execute at any cost. But it is not guaranteed that set timeout will always execute at 1 second. This is one of my favorite interview questions. I ask this quite often in the interview. The question is, I ask candidates to build a stopwatch in React. So where it take every 1 second, like it starts from 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes till 60 and stops. And I'll add a word like build a stopwatch in React that is accurate. And 99% of people whom I ask this question, maybe I might have asked this question to 50 plus people so far. Nobody looks at the word accurate and they start building the set interval, which ticks at every 1 second and start building the UI. And then at the end, I ask them a question, is the timer accurate? Then a bulb flash and they think probably it is not accurate. Then I ask them, can you make it accurate? Like, I want to ensure the timer always ticks at 1 second. Most will not be able to do that. So maybe I'll ask that question in today's maybe assignment. So you can take a look at it. But remember, set time or delay, whatever you're passing is not the delay. It is the minimum delay that you are passing. Any questions on this? I suppose it's a very common example. Most of you would know this by now, but I want to keep a very common one so that when I ask a complicated one, your basics are set. Okay. The reason why the problems like accurate timer becomes very important, right? Let's say there's not some interviewer fancy sort of a question. You are building a stopwatch for Olympic game. Let's simply hypothetically take where you built a timer that is running on web and you're tracking the time. And if your timer, every millisecond there counts, right? If it is not accurate, then you're not actually measuring the time taken by an athlete, correct? So there are ways to make it accurate. It's a good, interesting question to read as well. Okay. So now, before basically we're going to the next topic, few things like how do we differentiate and all. Remember these takeaways. JavaScript execute code using a single call stack. Asynchronous operations are handled by browser web APIs. Micro tasks have higher priority than macro tasks. Event loop decides the execution order. Set timeout of 0 does not mean immediate execution. I already mentioned this. Okay. So now, one important thing that probably I did not explain here is the concept of event loop itself. Okay. Uh, See, event loop is actually something but a software. Software is not the right word. Event loop is actually a scheduler program, okay, that a browser or a different JavaScript environments will have. That is, its responsibility is basically nudge the JS engine. JS engine is here, event loop is here. If you see JS engine is here, event loop is here. It'll just nudge the loop that, like, if your stack is empty, here are something that you can do. Okay, this is more like, you could consider in a very simple words, is like a program that runs at a periodic interval of time, like polling, very common example, right? Like polling that happens very common. So event loop is nothing but a polling that happens, let's say for simple examples, like let's say every 100 millisecond, event loop checks call stack and tells JavaScript engine that, hey, there is a callback queue or micro task queue which is empty, the macro task queue which has some data. Do you want to pick from that? But the ultimate responsibility of picking the task and putting it to call stack is still done by the JavaScript engine only. Event loop is just act like a trigger. And there are different event loops for different systems. Google Chrome has a different event loop. Node.js has a different event loop, or other environments like embedded systems have a different event loop. JavaScript as an engine is not mandating it to have a one way of event loop. Every engine can have their own event loop. All JavaScript wants is some way that event loop works. Like JavaScript as a language would express some interfaces. Whoever write the engine, they have to make sure like the event loop responds it in a right way. Okay, I'll take a pause. After I explain this, I'll take a pause and you can ask me if you have any questions on the event loop. How event loop different from the JS engine? This entire concept of event loop is different. The event loop is a browser-side scheduler that coordinates when JavaScript engine can execute queued callbacks, as I mentioned, right? Location inside the JS runtime. The JS engine is inside the runtime. So this is event loop is inside the browser runtime. Okay. Now language C++ depends on different languages. Different event loops are written in different languages. The one in the V8 is still written using C++. Both of this. Responsibility of JS engine execute JavaScript. Event loop is just schedules JavaScript. Event loop is not responsible for doing anything. It is just like not responsible for executing anything. Okay. JavaScript engine has call stack, event loop has no call stack. It executes a JavaScript, it has no JavaScript. Controls timings, no, it controls time. Basically, JavaScript engine do not know when to execute what. It has no control on the timing. Event loop will be constantly nudging it so that like it gets to know, okay, this is available next, let me execute. Okay, I answered this little bit. Why doesn't a JavaScript engine includes an event loop? Okay, as I told, because JavaScript is designed in a host agnostic way. JavaScript engine can run on browser, Node.js, Deno, embedded system, and like, as you know, like probably like any system that you take that can practically execute a code that can be written in JavaScript. Now we are at that state in life, that state in technology. So JavaScript as a language is not making it like you should have this way of executing the event loop. Okay. Each environment provides its own APIs, its own event loop implementation. Event loop is not equal to Node.js event loop. V8 is reused, but event loop is replaced. Like different, many like Node.js uses still V8 as an engine. Many of the Node.js versions, but they don't use the event loop of the V8. They use their own event loop. Okay. Summary: JavaScript is a single-threaded, synchronous by default. The browser runtime enables asynchronous behavior using web APIs, task queues, and the event loop. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, primarily around the last segment that I explained, how event loop is actually different than the event loop that we together see. Right? Like event as a concept, also this is called event loop, but that event loop in isolation also has an existence, which is basically a scheduler program. So, are there any questions on this? You are free to unmute yourself and you can ask me.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, event loop continuously tells JS engine that take this task and execute. That's the definition.
Correct. So, in a very simple words, event loop is a scheduler program. Like in very simple words, as I told you, it's a poll you can consider. If let's say you want to make a polling API every 3 seconds and get some data, right? Event loop does also the same way. It will nudge the JS engine. Hey, there are certain things here. Because JavaScript as an engine ecosystem is only having, as I told, the memory heap and the memory heap and the call stack. These are the only two things that JavaScript engine has. It doesn't have any other capability because all of them are handled by browser. like web APIs and whatever the API calls, everything set timeout, geolocation, all of that. Now it needs a way where this call stack and these browser capabilities interact together. So event loop act as that nudge. Hey, JavaScript engine, there are certain things in microtask queue. Do you want to pick? There are certain things in the macrotask queue. Do you want to pick? JavaScript engine takes a call of picking them.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Arpan, you had some question.
Yes, I wanted to understand the set interval one which you explained now.
Yeah, which one, Arpan? Sorry, I did not hear you fully.
No, about set interval.
Uh-huh.
Means why we cannot use to make stopwatch using set interval?
Sorry, maybe I did not hear fully, Arpan. Like I got the questions regarding set interval. Yeah.
Yeah, it is regarding the stopwatch which you mentioned.
I mean, why you said it cannot be made accurate? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah, why it cannot be accurate, I told, right? From the architecture point of view, if you see, this is our architecture of the overall event loop, right? So call stack has a highest priority, followed by we have here I've written callback queue and priority queue, but here we have like macro task and macro task, your common convention. So we have a call stack, we have a macro task and macro task queue. So the order of the execution you guys already saw, like how it will executed is first call stack must be empty, executes all micro tasks, executes one macro task, repeat the cycle. If you understood this correctly, that means until the call stack is empty, no macro task is picked or no micro task is picked, right? So what do I mean by call stack is empty? So let's say there is certain synchronous activity that's happening. I gave an example of for loop, right? Let's say you are running a for loop for 1,000,000 times. Definitely it's going to take some time, correct? Arpan. So by the time that much time is taken, you also had written a set interval which is supposed to execute every 1 second. Now that has to be ideally picked from the macro task queue, the macro task queue, but it has not been picked because call stack is busy. Until the event loop would nudge, but call stack until it is free, it wouldn't pick anything here. So you expected it to run after 1 second, but call stack got free after 2 seconds. Now it will pick the things from the macro task queue.
Got you.
Correct. So, but it may not be a usual case, honestly. Like nobody would write a for loop with 1,000,000 values, right? That is the assumption with which JavaScript is built. If you think, if probably there is no language, as far I know, something like this, where you write a timeout and an interval, but those will not be executed at the duration that you specify because it's not fully predictable. JavaScript is not unlike C or C++. You cannot fully predict it. But I think it is under the basis of the sane programming. A real or a sane programming would not be done that way. With that assumption, the JavaScript works well in most cases. So anything around the time, anything around the accuracy, you have to put additional effort. Also, one more small point in interview: if you think the problem is very easy for the company you applied, like the one I gave, right? Can you build a timer which is accurately? So then see there is some catch. Probably like if you're applying for a company that is not paying you well or anything like that, then probably the question might be simple. But if you think there's a disproportionality in the question and the company and the salary, then there is something that is hidden meaning in the question. So like go through it 2-3 times and you can ask interviewer to get the questions clarified. Like hardly anybody asks me what is accurate in the question. If they were asked, like then I have to explain. Then there's high chance they at least try in the right direction. Okay. Now, are there any questions? Otherwise, we have a small quiz, maybe a matter of 10 minutes small quiz followed by we can take a 5 minutes break before I go to the next topic. Any questions?
So Vasanth, if you have 10 micro tasks all at once, it executes all the 10 micro tasks, then it come back to call stack and then go back to a macro. Is it a
correct? First, all the things in call stack executed. Then once it comes to micro task queue, everything in the micro task queue is executed, and then again it go back to call stack.
But
So
it is not same as macro task. If macro task has 10 execution, it just executes only one thing at a time.
Correct, Victor. Yes, that's how it is built. Okay.
Actually, I want to ask how we can patch the set timeout issue in the stopwatch.
Yeah, I mean that is something that I wanted to give as a take-home assignment. But in a nutshell, Chirag, with so much of explanation that I did, you cannot solve that problem. Okay, because this is how JavaScript executes. You cannot make it accurate.
Okay.
You get my point? So, but what we can make, probably we can make it more accurate. That is, you can have an interval for a very short duration. So the chances that it executes is quite high. and you can nullify some differences. I'll give you an example. Let's say instead of run, you want to have a timer for 1 second. Okay, instead of you running an interval for 1 second, you will run it at every 100 millisecond. So to achieve that 1 second of interval, you are running the interval for 10 times, and you can have some date object used within that interval, so that like you could check the start date and end date. If there are any nuance differences, you can try to subtract it and add it to the next interval. Like for example, the first interval was supposed to execute, let's say it started from 0. It was supposed to be executed at 100, right? Let's say it executed to 120. Now the next interval, you could make it 80 millisecond. Getting my point, Chirag?
Yes.
Yeah. But will it make it 100% accurate? No. Relatively more accurate. Okay. But if there is anyone of you who can find a way to make it more accurate, I'll be more than happy. Like, I've researched a lot. I could not find. Only way I could think of my mind is if there is a way where we could interact with the system time. That if you know, right? Like today in a laptop, how does actually the time works? There are crystals inside the laptop, right? Even if you're not connected to internet, even if you turn off your laptop and turn it on, how does always the accurate time comes up? Because there are crystals that are moving even when you close the laptop. Quad crystal is one of the most popular crystals that is used. There are many other crystals as well. Correct. So if there is any way we could use that device crystal capability, there could be some way, but I haven't explored that deep. Only then we could make the timer very accurate. Here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any thoughts or questions before we go to the quiz?
So in the interview, get us create the accurate timer so we can answer. We cannot. I mean, try
So
to
if-
make it accurate.
So if the question, like if let's say somebody like me asks this question to in the interview home, my suggestion is like try to understand for the question what do they mean by accurate. So if they ask accurate, then if you could really say I cannot build an accurate clock, then you already are in the right track. But you could only make it more accurate than the traditional approach. That's it.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so not related to JavaScript. Like, if something is related to use case, like if we can't build some application which is most accurate with JavaScript, at that point of time, we need to choose some other languages or anything, right?
This is a good question, Anas. Like, let's say we want to build something like a timer that is required, for example, space mission and all, right? So there
Yeah.
has to be like super critical. Like you cannot even a millisecond delay is not acceptable.
Yeah.
In such situations, I would say definitely the client the JavaScript should not be the approach
Right,
for you.
right.
So what you could do is you could have certain time that you rely on backend or some time which comes from the crystal that they're looking for. If you read about a time, it's a very, very interesting subject. So quad crystal, I told you, basically it's a crystal that resonates at a frequency. Today, if you see most watches have that crystal, that whatever the frequency at which it is resonating, that we're considering as a second. So if you use some other crystals which are more accurate than quad, we might get more accurate time. So if it's a very time critical, then they'll have that way of like basically ideal implementation of this to answer your question should be run in the backend. And those backend should be deriving their time from some crystals like this, like which are like giving the very accurate frequency for their use cases. Quad probably is something suitable for most of our day-to-day timing purpose, but there are like very efficient crystals which give us more predictable and very close to very close data.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Anush. Any thoughts or questions? Okay, so now it is 12:26. I'll share a simple quiz, not having very complicated questions in the chat. So 12:26. So there are 10 questions in this quiz. You can go through it and you could answer. You can answer all the questions. I will give you 10 minutes. That is 12:26. You can take 12:36, maybe 2 minutes buffer, like 12:38. Finish the quiz and take a break till 12:45, and come back at 12:45. We will go to the leaderboard. Who solved how much? And then we'll see if you can pick the next topic today and we'll start the next topic tomorrow. Okay, I'm sharing the quiz. Go ahead and solve the quiz. And if you face any difficulty in accessing the quiz, let me know. Please use the same email ID that you've been registered or in this call so that predictability becomes easy over a period of time. I see like all of you have taken the quiz, and also I hope you go to a short break and you're back. Let me share my screen again. So I'm using a Safari browser, so I feel because of that there is a little bit of the delay in screen sharing. So once the screen is fully visible, you can tell me. Okay. Is it visible? Anybody on call?
Not still blurry.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
it may get clear.
Yeah, it is good now. Good. Okay, sure. All of you have responded, 18 responses I see. We'll go through the answers. Once after we see the answer, then we look at the leaderboard, how everybody have performed. The whole purpose of me showing your scores to yourself, some of you might have already know. Just like if somebody scored less is not inferior or somebody scored more is not superior. So that there is a healthy competition among the group to pursue for the excellence. That's the only reason. Okay. Now, I will go through all of the questions very quickly and we'll go through the answer and you by yourself would know have you answered it correctly or not. So consider this as a quiz that's probably least useful for your interview. Okay. These, as you also know, it's like more like the easy questions are only asked here. The chances that these questions will be asked are very less. This is only just like quick refresher for the session. There is another quiz which will be shared tomorrow. If you could answer that without taking any help quite well, consider you are like very good. Okay, now if you're done well here, you're like, okay. Huh? So which of the following best describes the JavaScript execution in the browser? Multi-threaded and asynchronous by default, single-threaded and synchronous by default. I suppose I repeated multiple times this in the session today. So JavaScript is a single-threaded and synchronous by default. Okay. Which component is responsible for executing the JavaScript code? Certainly the JavaScript engine is responsible for executing the JavaScript code. Neither the web APIs nor event loop or the task queue. What will be the output? So we have start and timeout. Though timeout has 0, definitely, I'm sorry. There is a start, timeout, and there is an end here that was not shown. So it is start, end, and timeout. This also we discussed in the session. Couple of questions were like this only in the similar pattern. Which of the following is not a part of the JavaScript engine? Definitely, event loop is not a part of the JavaScript engine. Execution context is also part of the engine, which was our next topic. Okay. And who provides web APIs like set time mode, fetch, and DOM events? So browser runtime provides all of that. Where are promise callbacks? Where are promise callbacks? Then and catch are placed after the resolution. They are placed in the micro task queue. What will be the output here? Similar to the above one, it is like 1423, 1423 because promise has higher precedence than set time mode. And who is allowed to push the functions onto call stack? Again, JavaScript engine. Nobody pushes there. Event loop only nudges. JavaScript engine itself will take anything that can be executed and puts it into call stack. What is the primary responsibility of the event loop? It schedule when callbacks can be executed. That is the primary responsibility of the event loop. Okay. Again, the output of this, it is AD and CP, similar to the above one. Okay. Now, if you look at the leaderboard, right? I have even opened here. See, all of your scores are here, even here as well. Okay. So this is from us only. And like I'm not going to go through each and every one of everyone's score. You would know your email ID and the score against it. Okay. Even here. And who submitted first? Maybe the first submitted is Shrikar submitted first. Okay, 1228 with 8 being correct. Arpan Sahu has done 10 out of 10 and Gaurav Joshi also has done 10 out of 10. Shahab also has done 10 out of 10. Abhijit and Srijis also have done 10 out of 10. Okay. A few who have done quite close. And here you could see like all the answers that you have made and the questions and options that you have selected. Okay. So just to keep a healthy competition, I'm showing the score so that like whoever performed well, keep it up. Who hasn't performed that well, basically you can spend time. The whole purpose of like basically is such questions are very common in interview. We call them like snippet driven questions. Some were here multiple choice, but otherwise a snippet is shown to you and you're expected to give the right answer. So it involves multiple skills. Like one is a comprehending skill, how quickly you can understand the question, and second, analyzing it. Third, answering it. Same applies even for the machine coding skills. The comprehension, like to understand what is the question, think what is the right approach to solve the problem. The example, like some techniques like DSA, you might be using binary search to solve a problem. Correct. So, but that may not be like outspoken binary search. There'll be a problem where you need to think and see, can you use a binary search. Finally, third part is writing the code. If you see three parts of execution, understand the problem, what to use, finally write the code. Today, the third part has become easy, writing the code. Still, engineers required for the first and the second. Okay. Now, the next topic that I want to teach today was actually the execution context, but we are almost at the time. And first session itself, I don't want to overwhelm. So what I'm going to do is in tomorrow's session, we'll be covering the execution context, hoisting, closures, and the beginning of the session, we will be discussing about the DSA and general profile building capabilities. So we'll start the session with that, a small non-technical topic for 15-20 minutes. How I shaped my profile, where the chances of me getting an interview call got increased, right? So similar, whatever technique that worked well for me and my mentees, I'm going to teach those techniques. Some of them you might be already doing, some of them you may not be doing. So you can practice those, then they can start doing, because I always believed job search is a passive process. When you have the right job, make sure like you are preparing for the next job. It's not like when you don't have a job or when it becomes very difficult for you, that is not the time when you look for the job change. Okay, we're going to learn quite a few tricks, how basically you can stand top in the LinkedIn or any other job portals whenever they're searching. All of the things we will learn tomorrow. Okay. Any questions around the quiz? Some question was unclear, or any thoughts around that? Sure. See, I have a request, like basically how we can have this tomorrow session. I someone who believe instead of having session at 11 or at least on Sundays, having between 8 to 10 is slightly a good idea, because most of you would get the rest of the Sunday for yourself. Some here have families, so I think everybody has family, but some are married and they're having kids and all. So probably like finding it by 10 will give little more time for the rest of the day. But I know for some Sunday they don't want to wake up very early. So what is the thing? If again I can poll it on the Discord and get your opinion. Can we try at least tomorrow between 8 to 10? And if you guys really not liking it, we'll again move to 11 and 1. Is that okay? Okay, Srijit has given yes. Yes, many have told yes.
Maybe
And
8:30 to 10:30.
yeah.
Wasn't just for that.
Well, no, I thought of that, but again, I think beyond 10, probably people may not like wait to have breakfast, right? Like they could wake up and come to session, and 10 by then, like everybody will be hungry. If you can find 10 by 10, then they can go and have their breakfast. So two reasons I do. I think even when I was mentoring also I used to do this. I used to take an early session. So two reasons. One, definitely you get rest of the day for your preparation. Now with this type of session, like first half is gone. Now you have your lunch and take some rest, or then you by the time you start, the day is almost over. 8 to 10, you get complete day for yourself. And second is definitely you all have some personal time also required. It all complete weekend you cannot only dedicate for this. So some time at least you get on Sundays. So let's try between 8 to 10. And
Okay.
if things do not work out, again, you are always free to message me on WhatsApp, like the number, whatever we are coordinating with you, right? Anytime you message, I get notification. Anything non-technical, support staff would respond. Anything technical, I myself will check it. Or any suggestions you have, you can always message me. I don't know. Don't consider this imposing as 8. If things do not work out, probably we'll move back to 11. Okay. I think 11 is anyhow fair time, but just that it takes a lot of your time. Okay. Sure, that's all for the session one. Again, if you have any thoughts, questions, again, I'll be creating a Discord group and I'll be sharing I will inviting all of you there. Please start using the Discord. The whole purpose of creating Discord is like even after the cohort is over, also we can still stay connected. And if there are any updates or discussions, we can have there. And purposefully, I'm not creating WhatsApp or Telegram or anything like that. Because I suppose like very few here might be using Discord for their activities. So Discord can act as a way, if you're coming to Discord, probably you're coming for the cohort. You come with a mindset of learning. So that's the reason I'm creating. Like I have 2 email IDs in my YouTube. Like when I open YouTube, one email ID, I never watch shorts, reels or anything. I only consume good content. So it's my mental shift. So if I'm using that ID, then it's that I will not be I'll not be wasting time. Okay.
Yeah. And
Sure.
make sure that Discord has only registered members that we have in the
Yeah.
sessions,
Yes.
because Telegram is having a lot of
Yeah, no, no.
candidates over there. So
Everywhere, basically, anywhere we would have a group, it's going to be only for this cohort members only, nobody else, except that me and one more my support staff. There's not going to be anybody else.
Yeah,
Okay.
and request all of us to not send that link or invite to anybody, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, we'll monitor that, Abhijit. If we see
Okay, okay.
anybody who are not a part and they've joined it, we are gonna
Uh-huh.
like it's basically it comes to your email ID
Hmm.
as an invite, right? So we would invite
Okay,
only the cohort members. Yeah.
correct. Yeah, thanks. All the note details and all will be share over there only.
Yes. No,
Okay.
after the end of this session, maybe we would take a
Huh.
couple of hours because this record need to be uploaded and comes. So this
Okay.
recording, the Notion document, and even
Huh.
the summary of the Gemini is running here when I'm talking, right? It'll give a summary of the overall meeting. Those all of this will be shared to you over an email, and
Huh.
I'll also add all of that in the Notion document also. Okay. So
Okay,
how
that will
how
be
I'm
useful.
trying to, right now how the plan to share the video content is all of these videos will be uploaded to YouTube and they'll be
Hmm.
unlisted. Unlisted means only registered email ID people can actually view it. So those
Hmm.
email IDs will be shared with your email IDs, whatever we have been communicating it. To those
Hmm.
email IDs, we give access. And same link is taken and added into the Notion document. So anytime future also you're referring the Notion document, you will have a session recording to go through. You want something or any info like that. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay then.
Vasanth, I have one doubt.
Yeah, Victor.
So the reason why I haven't sent the LinkedIn is, do I need to refactor or to more specific in front end or a full stack? How I should protect myself? That is a question.
No, you took like if I heard it correctly, like you shared the resume and you wanted if there any changes need to be done, Victor. Am I right?
No. Like for this cohort, you're mainly focusing on front end, right? So
Correct, Victor.
I work as a full stack with front end heavy, something like that. So
Yeah.
how do you like us to project ourselves in the interviews as a front end, senior front end developer or a full stack developer?
Good question, Victor. Like if it would have been any of your personal question, I would have asked you to stay back and after the meeting I would have taken. But this is a question that probably applicable for all. So I request you guys also to stay. So all I suggest is, in fact, I've made a lot of videos about it. Full stack is basically becomes very tricky in terms of interview. Okay. The reason being, what is the right full stack combination? React you can use for front end, Angular you can use on for the front end, Vue or plain HTML, CSS, all of this you can use on front end. Backend you could use C Sharp, Java, or the .NET or Python, many languages. So right full stack combination becomes slightly difficult. Though predominantly we could say Java and React is been the common combination, but it is not guaranteed in the companies that you are applying. A lot of enterprise companies would use C Sharp and .NET framework. And second, the interview, right? You should be good at both front end and back end, especially if you have 5+ years of experience. You should will undergo one round of DSA, one round of testing your front end skill, one round of testing your back end skill, one round of system design. So interview as a process becomes quite difficult. So to answer the question straightforward, my personal suggestion is you become a full stack developer in your day-to-day activity. So because of GenAI, coding is not difficult, whether you are doing front end or back end. During the interview change, if you feel you're good at both, then create two different resumes, one for front end, one for back end. Certainly you can have a full stack resume as well, but apply individually for the front end developer roles, back end developer roles, and full stack developer roles also. But I would still prefer you applying more for the front end developer role alone and back end developer role alone. That is probably a good career option. Plus, that is going to be like your interview process becomes quite easier. Any one stack you have to focus, you don't have to worry about learning everything. So that would be my suggestion, Victor. Identify your inclination, front end or back end. You may know both, but you may still prefer to do one thing very well. You may like something. In your case, you told front end heavy. So create a resume that has explain all of your front end skill and start applying for the job. That would be my suggestion, Victor.
Okay, Vasanth, yeah, thank you.
Any other thoughts or question from anyone?
Yes, Om here.
Okay.
Considering the system design round for the front end developers, so when company took a system design, they consider system design as a system design or backend or front end system design, because I see many content for the backend, many content front end. But the interview point perspective as a front end developer, if someone goes into system design round, how they should prepare? They should prepare as a whole system or only the front end?
A good question. Yeah. So many have this doubt actually. Like, anyhow, we are gonna have a system design dedicated session. But to give an overview about the system design, and with my experience of giving many interviews, in almost now, if you are having like 5 to 6 years of experience applying for a senior or staff role, you'll be asked to have a good knowledge on system design. And there are two levels of system design we can break down. One actually is where a system design or some intricate questions on a system will be asked. For example, they can ask questions about autocomplete, YouTube, video streaming, etc. Another thing could be more like not delving deep into systems, but a combination of multiple different systems. Like one way, like you pick YouTube and ask different questions on YouTube. How does autocomplete works? How does video streaming works? How does the commenting works? And all of this is one way. Another thing is you pick a slices of different systems. Like for example, you could ask how does the video streaming works, and probably in another system you could pick and ask like how does the seat selection works in Book My Show or Make My Trip. How do you select the seats? So it could be a combination of questions from multiple different things, and it can also have a very practical questions. Like for example, you are building a project structure for 50 people. How are you going to build it? So some will be from practical options, some will be from technology, but it may not around one system. Another will be around one system, extremely in depth. Now to answering your question, Om, will it be backend heavy? It will not be backend heavy in most cases, but you need to have a fair understanding how the system would work in the backend. To give you an example, whatever the solution that you propose, that should not be practically unimplementable on the backend. Like let's say you have certain connection with backend and there are multiple backends interacting to do whatever that you want to do. If you say like backend A interacts with the backend B in a synchronous way, and then when the traffic increases on backend A, your system might be choked. So you need to have a fair understanding how we can introduce the queues like Kafka, so that like system A and system B are not interacting in a synchronous way, but they're interacting in a synchronous way. The overall scalability would improve. In a nutshell, are you required to have a good understanding of the backend system design, like in-depth understanding of implementation? No. But you need to have a fair understanding how system together works, how backend will interact, frontend would interact with backend, how many backend systems are there. I'm going to cover that in our code as well. But a fair understanding of backend isn't required only.
Okay, got.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Any thoughts or questions before we end today's call? Sure. Yeah. Anybody has question? Okay.
Yeah, actually, I just want to like, I mean, I don't know, like today only, like I just had some emergency where somebody came to my home and I was a bit away. So yeah, I was not able to concentrate. So I'll catch up that. I just want to inform you that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that is what reflected in the quiz as well, where I just got confused between micro task and macro task queue, and like yeah, so. That is it. Yeah, sure. But I'll catch up with the recording.
No worries, Venkat. Yeah, again, recording will be shared with you. You can certainly watch it. Yeah. Any questions or thoughts before we end? Okay. So if there are any feedbacks about the session that probably you think could have been done better, you can always message us on the WhatsApp. So again, I don't want to take anyone's time. If things that you feel like hadn't done correctly here, so that I'll be more than happy to like make those changes if something that is practical to do. Okay. Thank you all for joining. See you tomorrow. Okay, at 8 o'clock. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.